In this film we're going to look at the various ways to trigger the flash when it's not physically on top of the camera. Not only does the flash have to fire, but it has to fire at exactly the right time in order to synchronise with the camera shutter. Not that that's a problem, I just thought I'd mention it. There are several ways of firing the flash. In this film I'll go through each method. I've also included a summary of the triggering methods in a PDF document as supplementary material, complete with the pros and the cons of each system. The first method of firing an off-camera flash is by using a PC sync cord, like this. One end goes in the camera and the other end plugs into the flash. Obviously, where else would it go? I'm not going to spend much time talking about these. The chances are that neither your camera or your flash has the right sockets to take the cord. It's mainly older model flashes and cameras that have the required sockets, but you can purchase hot shoe adapters to fit on the camera or flash to take the end plug of the cord. But really, by the time you've done all that, you might as well have purchased a wireless system. Also, when using a PC cord, you've got the inconvenience of an extra cable, which can cause accidents. I think I would say the only real reason for having one is in emergencies if you run out of batteries or the wireless system fails. If you've got a higher end DSLR and speedlight, the chances are you can simply fire the external flash by setting the pop-up flash into the required mode and just popping it up. I'm talking here about Nikon's Creative Lighting System, or CLS as it's known, or Canon's Advanced Wireless eTTL system, or the Olympus RC system. Other manufacturers almost certainly have their own equivalents. These systems use infrared light either from the pop-up flash or a special device that goes on the hot shoe. Depending on the manufacturer, when using the pop-up flash, you typically need to set the pop-up into some kind of commander mode so that it can talk to the external flashes, which are then placed into a remote mode. In the commander mode, the pop-up flash doesn't contribute to the exposure. It will only get used to set off the other flashes. When you use this method, the menu system on the camera allows you to change the flash mode. Here's how the pop-up flash menu looks on my Nikon camera. Just changing the flash mode from TTL to commander. Other cameras will have an equivalent type of menu. So these are set to the right modes. Let's give them a try. You should see the flash firing now. Nikon and Canon have dedicated infrared transmitters. They do the same job as the pop-up flash, but they're more convenient to use. Here's the Nikon one. It's called a SU800. The equivalent Canon device is called an STE2 or 3. Now, the advantage of these over using a pop-up is, first of all, you can dial in the flash power right from here, using buttons on the back. Plus, you don't blind your subject with flashlight from the small pop-up. Also, if you were shooting something very close, the pop-up flash could affect the exposure. I don't know if other manufacturers have the equivalent of these. Let's give it a try. I'll just pop the SU800 onto the hot shoe. Switch the camera back on. The flash is still set to the remote mode, so it should go off. Not sure if you can see that. Let's do a couple of goes. You should see the flash going off. If you don't have a high-end DSLR and flash, you might still be able to use your camera's pop-up flash by simply setting the flash into the slave mode, if it has one. In the slave mode, any flash that goes off will fire the external flash, so you'd have to be careful using it at a wedding, for example, when the guests taking photos in the same room could set off your external flash. The Yongnuo doesn't have any Nikon or Canon features, but it has a couple of slave modes, shown by the letter S here, so I can use a pop-up flash to fire it. I would have to set the external flash power using buttons on the back of the flash rather from the camera's menu system, but that's not really a problem. I'd also have to set the pop-up flash to manual and set the power very low so that it didn't affect the exposure. Let's give it a try. Remember that the pop-up flash is in manual mode. The external flash is set to slave. Give it a try. Should be going off. Good. None of the solutions I've mentioned so far are really ideal. The problem with using a pop-up flash or one of the little devices such as the SU800 to fire the external flash is that because they use infrared light, they require line of sight, so it can sometimes foul if there's something in the way of the sensor on the flash that picks up the signal. Could be a softbox or umbrella getting in the way. You just have to be careful that the sensor on the flash is facing in the right direction. In my experience, they work pretty well indoors, especially in a small environment like this one and the one we're going to be shooting in. In, say, a large wedding reception venue, they may prove inconsistent. Also, shooting outdoors in the sunshine can also give inconsistent results, and camera to flash distances are reduced because the infrared signal isn't bouncing off walls, etc. So these kind of infrared systems are all well and good, but I've really only mentioned them in case you already have the gear and you want to try off-camera flash before you go out and spend any money. Arguably the best and most reliable way to trigger flashes is using wireless radio triggers like these. They don't require line of sight, they have a large range and work around corners or through walls, and they're cheap, simple to use, and they work just great. Now, just a few years ago, the de facto standard triggers were made by a company called Pocket Wizard. They work perfectly well, but cost around £200 for each device, and you'd need at least two of them, one for the camera and one for the flash. Sure, there were cheaper Chinese versions on the market, but they weren't very reliable, so off-camera flash work was mainly the province of professionals and real enthusiastic, not to mention wealthy, photographers. To be fair, the Pocket Wizards are probably a little cheaper now, but in any case, things have moved on, and you can now buy a trigger and receiver made by Chinese companies starting from around £25. They're very well made and work just great. They sell them on Amazon with usually Amazon fulfillment, so you don't even have to actually get them from China. There's quite a few on the market made by companies such as Cactus, Elinchrom, Photix, etc. But I use these Yongnuo's RF603s. One goes on the flash, the other on the camera, and there's no differentiation between triggers and receivers. They're interchangeable. So let's see how they work. One of them goes on the hot shoe, doesn't matter which, they're all triggers or receivers. The other one goes on the hot shoe of the flash. Tighten it up. Switch the camera on. The triggers also have a small test button which you can use let's try them out. Yeah, it's working. Just to use for, well, testing purposes, obviously. With these type of devices, you do have to go to the flash to change the power level. Usually not a problem because the flash is nearby. But if you've got the flash high up on a stand, maybe behind your subject, it can be a little bit inconvenient. Yongnuo have recently brought out a trigger called the TC560TX. It goes on the camera's hot shoe, obviously, and this little gem allows you to set the power levels of the external flash or flashes right from the camera position. In the previous video, I mentioned that Yongnuo have recently brought out a Mark III version of this, their YN560 Mark II flash. The new version has a built-in receiver which works with either an RF603 or the new 560TX. To my mind, that's probably the best combination to go for if just starting out. By the way, when you buy any trigger from any manufacturer, you usually have to specify which brand of camera you're using. That's important. Buy the wrong version and it may not work reliably. There are also radio triggers you can now buy that have the full TTL capability and high-speed sync features that these manufacturer devices have. Again, Yongnuo comes to mind. They're around £100 for the trigger and two receivers, but you will need more expensive TTL type flash guns. You don't need anything like that for this course, but you might want to consider them for future use. In any case, I've listed them in the supplementary material shopping list. Don't forget, I've also summarised the different methods of firing the flashes in a separate PDF document, also in the supplementary material. It might help to give you an overall picture of the triggering systems. Bye for now.